And I'd now like to move on to the next panel, Cyprus, a New Chapter Ahead for Business and Investment, and ask Evgenios Evgeniou, Chairman of Invest Cyprus, to join me on the panel. And I might start. You don't want to make any comments straight away, but let me start by just asking you to comment on what we just heard from Mr. Patsalidis and some of the numbers he showed. One of the fastest growth rates in the European Union, one of the lowest inflation rates in the European Union, both public and private debt on a more sustainable path. How do you feel about that, about the situation? I mean, compared, I think probably almost the first time we met was over 10 years ago, yes, when Cyprus was having real difficulties. It's improved a lot. Does that make your job much easier? Is it is it easier given those sort of numbers to attract investment to Cyprus?
First of all, it's great to be here and to be with you on this panel. Let me put it another way. I think the investments that have been coming to Cyprus over the last couple of years have actually contributed to the numbers we've just seen. And this is something that has been acknowledged by the European Commission, the IMF, the European Central Bank, so the 5.78% growth in last year, and also the expected 2.8% growth for this year, which is well ahead of the European average, which is going to be, I think, 1%, is to a large extent because of the foreign investments coming to Cyprus. Cyprus has a very targeted strategy in terms of attracting investments and building on what Mr. Patsalidis said. We have a national strategy for attracting to Cyprus high specialization companies and talent. And this has created over the last couple of years a technology cluster that contributes to the Cyprus economy on the basis of a study carried out actually by EY, who's one of the sponsors of the event, in excess of 3 billion euros, hence the 12% GDP. So it's easier, obviously, to attract investments in an economy that is doing well. But the point I wanted to make is that those investments have in fact contributed to the economy doing so well, and that's why we continue to have this focus on attracting new investments to the country.
And I think one of the themes we were beginning to discuss in the question to one of the questions to Mr. Patsalidis was Cyprus needs to do a little more in the IT space than it is doing. Digital transformation is necessary. It's perhaps been a little bit weaker in that area than some of its competitors. Do you think that's correct?
It's true, and the national strategy for attracting high specialization companies and talent, which I have mentioned, which has, very briefly, if I may say, has two core elements. One is tax incentives for the employees, because Cyprus has been very good from the tax and legal regime for companies, but hasn't been so good in terms of attracting talent. But now for companies that fit into that definition of high specialization, for the people who actually have the skills, the government is giving a 50% tax reduction on their income tax. Which, coupled with the good living conditions in Cyprus, makes it a very attractive place to set up IT companies. Hence, the thousands of companies that have located to Cyprus, the thousands of people with their families that have come to Cyprus. And the second aspect of the strategy has to do with the facilitation of relocating people and basing them to Cyprus through a business facilitation unit that is actually in the ministry of Mr. Papanastasiou, with whom we have a very good cooperation. So the attractiveness of Cyprus for these companies contributes to the economy, but also is part of the transition of the economy. These companies are obliged to have 30% of their workforce to be from Cyprus, and hence the medium to long-term objective is that there is going to be some skills building and some transfer of knowledge to the local workforce. There is a shortage of IT skills on the island, and hence the strategy, the Vision 2035 that Mr. Patsalidis mentioned, one of its core elements is the educational reform and the reskilling of the labor force in Cyprus. We were late starters, but there has been significant improvement in the last couple of years.
And one other question that I'd like to ask you, and it may come up again later in the conference, Cyprus has, for all sorts of reasons, had quite a strong dependence, and dependence may not be the right word, strong relationship with Russia. Mm-hmm. Russian tourists, Russian investment. I guess in some ways that's more of a problem today than it perhaps was, particularly since Russia has invaded Ukraine. Do you see diversification generally away from Russia as an important goal?
It's been a goal for some time now. I think the growth figures for 2022 for last year demonstrate the resilience of the Cyprus economy. Many people thought that because of the sanctions, because of the tourism, the impact on the tourist sector, the economy was going to do really poorly in 2022. On the contrary, we're the best performing economy in the European Union, and that demonstrates once again the resilience of the economy. But I can tell you that the investments that we're seeing coming to Cyprus the last couple of years demonstrate this diversification of the economy. Our target as Invest Cyprus in terms of markets is our region, so the Middle East and plus Israel, Europe, and we include the UK in Europe in the geographic sense, and the US. And just to give you an indication, in a few days we'll have the annual investment awards that were under the auspices of the President of the Republic. Investors are sort of recognized, and out of the 7 companies that will be let's say recognized for choosing Cyprus, investing in Cyprus, 4 are US related, 1 is from Japan, the other is from Sweden, and the other I think is from the Middle East. So I'm just giving you this evidence as a demonstration of the shift in terms of our attention for new investments.
Any comments or questions from we had? Yes, you were going to ask a question before, so yes, let's have a contribution.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Evgenios Evgeniou. I'm the lead of research and development at Knight Frank. I would like to ask something. You mentioned before about lack of talent, about the need of bringing young people in the new positions in IT and technology, generally in Cyprus. Do you think that there is a mismatch between the salaries and the cost of living? Because, for instance, at the moment, a property in Limassol costs 1.2 thousand, 1 bed. How is it possible someone that earns 1.5K or 2K to survive in the island and have a better lifestyle and to attract people in a nice destination, of course, but why someone to live, not only Cypriot, but from any nation, to live UK, to go work in Cyprus? Do you have any program or any thoughts about that? Thank you.
Well, let me address this question. We have been victims of our success in terms of the cost of accommodation, primarily in Limassol, but also the shortage of places in private schools, again, predominantly Limassol. This has been the result of the thousands of people that have come to Cyprus to live and work because of the national strategy for attracting high specialization companies and talent. So indicatively, last year, through the business facilitation unit, went through 1,600 companies. Work permits were given in excess of 9,000 people for third-party nationals, so non-EU residents. And we estimate that something like 25,000 people in terms of family relocation have moved to Cyprus only last year. So Cyprus is very attractive actually for people with technology talent, and they're coming to Cyprus for the favorable tax, obviously, that incentive that is given by the government, but also what the investors are saying to us is that Cyprus is very attractive primarily for young families. the quality of life, the ability to take your children to school in the morning and sort of have lunch with them and then sort of meet them again in the evening and have a good family life is very attractive compared to other places where they can be based. And this is actually one of the factors that brings these technology companies to Cyprus, because their biggest, let's say, limitation is how to attract talent. And by putting Cyprus as part of their employee proposition, they're able to get more people on board. That's what they say. Now, this success has created an imbalance between demand and supply. And we're very optimistic that this imbalance will be addressed by the market. I believe that the government is also trying to assist in terms of building permits, etc., for accommodation that is suitable for these people. So Cyprus is attractive to these people, and that's why the problem was created in the first place, because there is so much demand and so little supply. But the market will address it, I think, over the next sort of year or so.
I think the questioner would quite like wages to rise, wouldn't he? Let's take one question from over there.
Theo Theodoro again. I put my hat on this time as transnational education. That's my specific area. Education is a major hub for international students, and especially in the UK, over 40 billion income comes into this country. But there are schemes such as in Dubai, in Malaysia, Mauritius, and so forth, where they have knowledge villages, a hub for education. Has our government thought of developing education hubs? I know recently American University of Beirut has joined, etc., but a planned hub for education to generate and recruit international students, to build, to generate and bring income into our country. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, actually the second, I mentioned the first pillar of our strategy in terms of attracting investments. The second pillar has to do with greenfield investments, and one of the priority areas is education alongside health and tourist infrastructure, and obviously the green and digital transitions. In Cyprus there are 11 universities, public and private universities. The public universities of Cyprus and the private universities of Cyprus rank very highly in the international rankings. They're in the top sort of 400 universities globally. I happen to know about the University of Cyprus because I sit on the council that it ranks in the top 50 new young universities in Europe. So the university education standard in Cyprus is quite high. And in terms of research, I might sort of add another piece of evidence. Out of the 37 centers of excellence within the European Union for research and development, these are funded centers for specific research. Out of these 37 centers of excellence, 7 are in Cyprus, focusing in the areas of energy, but also technology, infrastructure. So there is a concerted effort to attract foreign students. There are thousands of foreign students actually studying in Cyprus. Nicosia, we mentioned a lot about, we talk about a lot about Limassol, but Nicosia is very much a university town. There are something like 50,000 students living in Cyprus, many of them from abroad, attending primarily the private universities which offer the English-speaking courses. Now, the big challenge is to link the research that comes out of the universities with the private sector and to convert that research to business ideas. And the government has plans in terms of reforming legislation on how to do that. And the second challenge, which was again alluded by Mr. Patsalidis earlier, is how to connect the universities with the private sector in terms of providing the courses that are needed by the market. Having said this, one of the private universities in Cyprus offers some cutting-edge postgraduate programs in metaverse and in sort of technology, new technology. So we are moving in that direction, and it's one of the success actually areas in terms of attracting investments to Cyprus.
Okay, we've got perhaps got time for one. Did you want to ask one more question? Fairly briefly, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. It's me again. Yeah, I'd like to go back to investment, if you please. I'll give you an example. So you have what is referred to as the Global South, which literally represent like nearly 80% of the global market. So you have investors in that segment of the global market, right? Looking to invest anywhere their business can be attractive. So when they look at Cyprus, so the first thing that would be represent like a big step back for them is sanctions. They want to be in an enabling place where they are totally free to commerce with many countries around the world. So what's the position of Cyprus with regards to what I just mentioned and the concerns of the Global South economic actors? Thank you.
Sanctions.
Well, let me, in terms of the competition for attracting investments, let me just share the fact that Cyprus ranked third in the FDI Greenfield Index in terms of post-pandemic recovery in attracting investments. So we're quite successful. In fact, in 2022, we jumped 50 places from number 68 to number 18 globally, again in the FDI Greenfield Investments Index. So we're doing reasonably well. We're not complacent. We are focused on our strategy, and we want to do more. Now, in terms of, and because you asked earlier about Dubai and other places and how Cyprus compares, well, each country has its own unique characteristics. I don't particularly like to make direct comparisons. Cyprus, first of all, is a European Union member state, so it has all the pluses that go along the fact that we are members of the European Union and members of the Eurozone, and also the regulation and the reliability that goes along with that. And in terms of our geographic position, we are seen by many countries in our region, primarily the Middle East, but also Israel, as the gateway to the European Union, because we're geographically close to them, but also we're members of the European Union. It's also a place where, especially in the fintech sector, which is our third priority area, attracting regulated entities, primarily investment funds, but also fintech. And I will have the chairman of the regulator later on speaking, where they have launched an innovation hub where these companies can actually test their ideas in the context of a European regulation. So if any countries from outside the EU want to access the EU through Cyprus, they are most welcome to do so, as long as, of course, they meet the regulatory and compliance standards that the European Union sets for those companies.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Evgeniou. Okay, yes,
very quickly,
please. There's a microphone right next to you.
You refer to Cyprus as a wonderful place to bring a family and bring children, and therefore attracts foreign families. However, to make Cyprus continue to be attractive, we have to look after our environment. And my experience as a Cypriot with being a chairman of an association in Paphos is that town planning seems to continually give relaxations for private profit at the expense of both the environment and the interests of the local people. In Paphos, for example, Kato Paphos, which has thousands of years of history and culture and antiquities, a skyscraper has sprung up, and the said developer aspires to make Paphos the Dubai of Cyprus. Now, I hope that the new government will stop town planning from giving relaxations and breaking the law. Paphos has a topico schedule, a local plan on Coral Bay, which has to be complied with, and there are Developers are trying to bypass that through hierarchies, prosphyges, and all kinds of things. And I think if Cyprus wants to continue to be attractive, the environment and the development has to be sustainable, beautiful, harmonious, and in keeping with the environment. For the benefit of the local people, I think the developers have had enough gain and damaging both the economy and the people. Thank you very much.
Well, your question is beyond my response.
I'm sure the minister heard. The minister will have heard the question
it's
too.
Beyond, no, it's beyond my responsibilities as Invest Cyprus. As Invest Cyprus, our role is to promote Cyprus, to attract investment to Cyprus, to facilitate investors who want to come to Cyprus, and anyone who is interested, we're here to talk to them. And then also, obviously, to provide aftercare services in terms of listening to what they have to say. And it's part of their feedback that I said that they find Cyprus attractive for young families. Now, in terms of your question, this needs to be directed to the people who give these permits. But my only comment is that this effort to strike a balance between protecting the environment, which is extremely important, and growth is a challenge for most countries in the world today.
And the balance is not right at the moment.
Well, it's certainly a challenge in this country where planning is always a problem in the UK. Thank you very much, Mr. Evgeniou.